Kare Shalom, welcome to our watercolor journey. It's almost Christmas, so here are a few examples of super easy Christmas cards. You might want to grab a small dot glass to use with the first painting. Heinrich used an A3 size Bockingford paper to do these cards. He split the paper into 4 blocks with masking tape. You can use any of the 3 primaries and maybe burnt sienna for your base colors. He placed the 3 primaries in the palette with a touch of imidazolone brown to the right. You can use burnt sienna instead. He dips the glass into the paints in the center and then gently presses the glass on the paper to form a circle. Then he uses a very wet brush and some more water to fuse the colors from the outside in. He enhances the effect with some more paint from the palette. He will repeat this process with all the balls. He didn't press too hard with the first circle, so the lines are broken. But you can press a bit harder, especially if you use a paper with a rough tooth. Hot press paper would be ideal if you want to create exact outlines. Heinrich wanted to keep it very loose, so he didn't fuss too much with the outlines. Allow the paper to dry completely. If you've divided your page like this, you could start with the next card while waiting for this one to dry. The next card starts at about 4 minutes into the video. The balls are now dry, so he adds the tops with Imi Brown and dabs in some of the color mix from the center of the palette. He paints these lines very loosely to emphasize the light shining on them, and it gives the illusion of movement. Allow the paper to dry again. To give it a more Christmassy feel, he adds a few touches of gold paint to the tops. He also enhances the outlines a bit more to the left to create a shadow side. He liked the loose effect, that's why he left most of the outlines a bit rugged. For this card, Heinrich made a very loose sketch, a rough line for the tinsel and a few presents. Again, it's very loose, so you can play around with the colors on your palette. He adds touches of gold to brighten up the colors. Here he adds a few patches of blue to give the tinsel a bit of dimension. This card gives you plenty of space to write a Christmas message. This card is very easy to paint, and it will leave you with some space for your message. He splatters some gold paint on the card for the snowy effect, and then adds white gouache for the highlights. Always make sure that your first layers are dry before you use the gouache. Heinrich was a bit of impatient here. The final card is a small landscape. He drew the house and then wet the sky area up to the horizon line. He left the bottom part dry. He will use this later for dry brushing in the foreground. He uses blue for the sky and allows it to flow freely on the wet paper. Then he adds a tiny touch of red to create the purple shadows in the sky. He mixed some greens and adds those to the tree line behind the house and off to the right. Just dab the paint into the wet surface and allow it to float to create soft background trees. He wets the area beneath the horizon line and uses the blue and dry brushing to define the snowy terrain. Allow the painting to dry. He mixes some purple and paints the house. Nothing precise, as he wanted to keep the painting loose and suggestive. He adds a few more trees to the background. The new trees have hard lines, so they stand out a bit more against the background because they were painted wet on dry. A few dots for footsteps and a few grass shoots here and there. A house in the woods would have a fire burning. He uses some gouache and the purple mix to create a bit of smoke. Here he uses gouache for a few patches of snow on the trees. He also splatters some gouache to resemble snow falling. You can have a lot of fun with these cards as they allow for a lot of variation. Enjoy! Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you soon. Vaya con Dios.